Hello and welcome to the Leaders in Food podcast with me, your host, Tom Apperley. I'm also the founder and managing director of Harper Anderton, specialising in middle management and senior leadership roles for the food and drink industry across the world. Today's guest is someone that has experienced both manufacturing, retail, and has had a fantastic career across product development, and is now working in a very, very exciting sort of startup or SME space. Sally Lawrence, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Tom. Nice to be here.
Good stuff. Thanks for coming on. So Sally, let's get straight into it. Take me back to kind of when it started. So your degree, you started actually. So it wasn't actually food technology or food science. It was kind of more of a marketing focus. Was that originally your kind of initial plan when you got into the industry?
Well, you see, it's a food marketing degree, but actually it was all product development. As much as it was marketing, there was also food science in there. So the degree was kind of really focused towards product development, but from the whole product. So yeah, MPD was always what I wanted to do with that degree, and what I went on to do as well.
Yeah, and your first role was it with an ingredients business?
No, my first role was actually with it was on something called a teaching company scheme, which was run by the government at the time, getting sort of first class degree graduates into small businesses. So I worked for a company called the Pie Man in London, who did catering, high-end catering, and bakery desserts for the restaurants, and at the same time got to study my master's with South Bank University, and had a kind of support there to do that. So I did 2 years there on that scheme, going into the bakery. They didn't have any HACCP or any food accreditation or anything, so quite technical actually, rather than MPD, but very small business, and got to kind of get involved in all different areas of it. So lots of a broad experience, I guess, rather than a really kind of focused MPD role.
And do you find that sort of role where you're given exposure to other areas of the business has helped in your career over the years?
Yeah, definitely, and it's where I've been happiest as well. So I've done a few roles that are, when I was at Tesco's, it was product development, and then you're working alongside your technical people and your buyers, etc. But certainly the roles where I've been happier is where I'm involved in the wider scope of the business. And for me as a product developer, I think it's really important to be able to understand all the stakeholders, because you can come up with a great idea, but actually everyone in the business has got to be excited about it, and it's got to be right for everybody, not just consumer. You've also got production's got to be on board. Certainly in the bakery when I was there, we were the bane of the operations manager's life, because we were coming up with products that were going to make their life more difficult. So I think if you can take them with you on the journey, it's a whole lot easier.
It's going to help. Yeah. I was really interested to ask you about when you were with Rudolph Wild. You'd been there for 5 years, and then you made the move into Tesco. It seems like I think something that's fairly common with people that are coming up in the industry, thinking about making the move over to retail. Was that always in your plan?
Yeah, it was, because I always wanted to work, for big brands and food, and my intention was never to stay there for long. But it's honestly, those 2 years were so invaluable, because you get to see how, the people that you're going to work with, what their workload's like, how it works internally in the big retailers, and what their thought processes are. So definitely understanding retail from the inside has been a huge help. Yeah, not the right culture for me long term, but I think definitely worth a step there.
was it what you expected before you went into retail? You kind of thinking this is what it's going to be like. Did it kind of live up to your expectations?
Did it live up to my expectations? I think yes, in terms of the fast pace, the sheer amount of workload. Like, and I kind of said culturally, it wasn't the right fit for me long term. There's a lot more politics, if I may say. It's a little egotistical, and that kind of environment doesn't suit me, but didn't suit me very well. But it definitely taught me what I thought it was going to teach me, what I wanted it to teach me. Yeah.
And then after that, then so two years with Tesco as a development manager, that what they I suppose called product developers at that time. And then after that, it was back into the supply base, and then obviously into the specialist bread company.
Yeah, back into manufacturing for what was then Honeytop Foods, now Signature Flatbreads. They were one of my suppliers when I was at Tesco's, and they were a great family-run company, still privately owned, although they're very, very big. And we had some exciting times there. It was a small business when I joined, about 30 million turnover, and within the first year of me joining, we decided to build a whole another bakery and go into tortillas, pancakes, crumpets. So it was exciting.
How did you cope with the pace of that business? Because obviously I was really close to the business at that time, and like you say, the change was incredible. It must have been very different to an environment like Tesco's.
Very different. And I think that the difference is when you work for a founder-led business, that everything comes from the heart. And as much as they're also a founder-led business, innovation is also very much at the heart of Signature Flatbreads, and it's led by the founders. Charles and William are both both hugely keen on innovation. They launched the first tortillas back in the 1980s. They flopped
Wow.
because nobody knew what they were, but obviously they had the right idea. Looking at the market now, so working for that kind of environment, it's fun to be fast paced because you're all pulling in the same direction, because it comes from the top. It's a culture of innovation rather than a function.
Yeah, and it was a good culture, wasn't it, within that business, and some fantastic people, throughout in all sorts of different roles that probably made that company what it was and why it was so successful. And was that your first leadership role, Sally?
Yes, yeah, it was. Yeah, small team to begin with. There was only two of us, but obviously, as the business grew, quite substantially, much bigger team. But yeah, that was the first kind of leadership role, and where I was, reporting directly into the founders of the business.
And how did you manage going from a time where you weren't managing someone to actually having to be ultimately lead someone and be responsible for someone?
I think you're always learning about management, even when you're not a manager, aren't you? You take from, even now, you take from people what you like, and so previous managers, actually, where was I really motivated? What worked for me in terms of my manager's styles, and more importantly, what didn't work for me. And I always remember being in Tesco's and our founder saying, he came in, the new Cat D, and he said, your line manager is, the second most important person in your life.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, what an egomaniac. But you know what? He was absolutely right, because you have the influence on someone in their career, which is, and in your workplace, which is such a huge part of your life, that if you knock someone's confidence, even if it's in work, it has repercussions in your private life as well. So he was absolutely right, and I've always kind of taken that to heart, that actually everything I do as a manager is about the person as a whole, not just the person in the team.
That's really interesting, because I think you're right. As much as we're encouraged, and I think people are encouraged to kind of keep your work work separate, it's impossible not to, isn't it? You know, that what happens in your day is going to naturally affect the evening or the weekends anyway. Particularly with a role like within the food industry, where it's 24/7, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, when I go back to where I'm happiest, it's in a role where I'm exactly the same person as work as I am at home.
Mm,
In those bigger kind of industries, you're guarded, you're your work person. There's a different personality. You're not 100% authentic. But within
mm,
Signature Flatbreads and where I am now in Oppo Brothers, which again is founder led, I'm 100% myself. I'm the
mm.
same person that you'd find at work as you would in the pub on a Friday night, and that's, I think, really important. And certainly something as a female that I've had to work on, because leaving Tesco's, you do put barriers up. Um, there's that kind of imposter syndrome, if you like, that stops you from being perhaps 100% who you are.
From when you leave, leave the retail environment, obviously going to be in quite a rigid framework. Do you mean, or?
I can think of rigid framework, but also having to watch what you say in that
Mm,
kind of more
mm.
political kind of landscape.
The SME kind of startup environment, by the sounds of it, always has suited you, because it seems like you've been naturally drawn to it over the years, and obviously back in that space now with Oppo.
Yeah, I'm a fixer.
Mm,
It's essentially where I'm at my happiest. It's finding solutions to problems, and in the startup, that's exactly what it is. And growing, and um,
mm,
having to be open and honest. So many things that we have to go and find out about that we just don't know how to do, and you can't do that if you're trying to pretend that you know what you're talking about. It's got to be a kind of honest, like, right, we've got to do this. We have absolutely no idea how we're going to
mm.
do it. Let's go and ask for help.
But did your experience with Signature really, equip you with with all the information and knowledge of, knowing kind of what to do when you have the challenges at Oppo that you do at the moment, perhaps?
It certainly gave me the skills,
Mm,
and a lot of the knowledge from the manufacturing. So we use co-manufacturers as opposed to having our own manufacturing. But it gave me that kind of factory knowledge, definitely. But working with people like Charles and William at Signature, it gave me the skills to kind of to do what I need to do at Oppo. And I think one of the real things in startups is having grit, is keeping going. Is making mistakes and learning from them really quickly. And definitely, as a founder-led business, they were keen to kind of take risks and fail fast.
mm.
So yeah, I think definitely skills-wise, it kind of was a natural flow into Oppo.
At the time when Signature were, 2008, something like that, there didn't seem to be many of those types of businesses coming through. Now there seems to be lots of exciting businesses, and really exciting brands like Oppo that are breaking into the market and getting some real traction within grocery. Do you think now the environment's easier to do that?
Um, I think the selling space, I think digitalization of selling and e-commerce has made it easier for brands to get off the ground, and then test concepts, test products, test them in a space where you're not, your first step isn't getting on that retailer shelf. Your first step is actually, you can sell by yourself, or you can sell through smaller kind of distributors. So I think it's probably more the channels to market that have made it easier for
Mm.
products to be developed, tested, and then scaled up.
Yeah. And at the moment, when you look at, the next couple of years, what are the biggest challenges do you think that you face with Oppo?
With Oppo, I mean, it's a difficult space at the moment, manufacturing, food, prices, inflation. I think that's, and potentially looking at, whether we're going to face a recession. And, COVID has really changed the way people shop and the way people eat.
Mm,
And I think it's going to be a challenging time in understanding how consumers' behaviour has changed and how we keep up with that to make sure that we keep our products relevant. Obesity isn't going anywhere. It's kind of dropped off the agenda in terms of the health because of COVID. But it's not gone anywhere. That it's not stalled. So I think the likes of HFSS coming in October should hopefully get some traction back into the healthy eating.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the conversation will shift, in the next few months towards that again. I wanted to ask you about obviously, home life, and because in that time you've had a family, haven't you? How do you manage a role that's so full on? Such as the roles that you've had with obviously kind of having a family and stuff.
How do I manage? With a nanny, that's how I manage. So I had to take a couple of years out. My youngest son has Down syndrome, and when he started school, that was the one point where I was like, actually, do you know what? I can't do both. Something's got to give here. I can't give him my 100% to settle him into school, and still give work my 100%. So, at that point where I knew that I couldn't give both everything, I took time out. I took a couple of years out and concentrated on him. But within those 2 years, I could tell just in my own personality, I was really missing that connection of work, of the team and of people, and the excitement and what that gives me. And so I took the decision to go back to work. And I do believe in happy mum, happy family, and making it work together. I have a very supportive husband who also works full time, but it's dual childcare, it's dual responsibilities in the home, and my kids are happier for me being back at work because I'm happier. And I also think it's a really good role model. I've got 2 boys, but I'm really keen for them to see mum as a working mum.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you ever think that there was ever a point where you thought, oh, do you know what, I'm not gonna be able to go back, or was it always in the plan?
There was a real guilt factor in going back. I can't lie. The kids have got used to me being around for school before and after, and there was a real it was a difficult decision to make because I felt hugely guilty that I wasn't going to be there for them anymore. But working through it, like I say, the right thing for us in the transition was difficult with me going back. Everyone was really grumpy about it. Everyone had to change all of their kind of routines around me, and that made me feel even more guilty. But getting through it as a family, we're much happier with me at work.
Yeah, I bet. And how do you, with all that going on and everything that's obviously kind of coming with the job and family, how do you manage to keep sort of high levels of productivity when there's clearly lots going on in your personal life and and with work?
But I'm the most productive when I'm busy. So yeah, that's what I'm driven by. I'm driven by being busy. Actually, if there is a time when I'm not, I'm actually less productive. I just do think it's one of those kind of how long is a piece of string. If you've got 2 days to do a project, you'll take 2 days to do a project, but actually give yourself 1 day and you've probably got the same results, just more concentrated work. So it's about making sure that the kids come first, but also, and that's another thing that I've had to work on over the last few years, is actually putting myself first as well, and not feeling guilty about that. So yes, there's there's work, and then there's the kids, and then there's the kids clubs, but also trying to fit some time for me in terms of health and fitness around that as well, and not feeling guilty about it.
Did that take you a while to get to that stage where you weren't feeling guilty?
Yeah, it was the biggest, it was probably the most difficult thing I've done in my career, was actually going back after those 2 years, and kind of just wrestling with those inner demons. And when I went back, it was kind of I was absolutely 100% in making this work, which meant that I was super mum and super work, probably for the first year, 100 miles an hour. And then once I'd kind of settled into it, I was like, okay, no, this is working now. Now we need to step back, and I don't need to be super mum. I can just be mum, and then make some more time for me and for my husband, to be honest, because that's important as well.
How did you manage that sort of inner dialogue then, that inner doubt in your head that was maybe sort of making, giving you those feelings?
I actually worked with a consultant, Becky Currell, who works with women, and kind of specializes in women at my stage of life, so perimenopausal or menopausal. And she just worked through with what I was feeling, why I was feeling it, whether that was kind of put on myself. Perfectionism is probably one of my traits. And actually I don't need to be perfect. So I worked through all of that with her. She was amazing, and helped me treat myself as I would treat others, which was really, really useful.
Would you, and anyone in a similar situation to you that has those, sort of thoughts around that, would you recommend, going down the coaching route and seeking out a mentor and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I do, because I think, this stage of life is actually really, really coming back after children is really tricky, whether it's, when they're young or whether you've taken a later break. Your confidence goes, because you've taken those two years out. And it is returning from maternity again is another tricky time. So you might have a great business that's kind of bringing you back with open arms, and that's great. But if you do need external support, then for me it was really, really useful, because as females, and I'm not saying it's only females, but we do tend to put everybody else before ourselves. It's not natural for us to put ourselves first, whether that's the way that we were brought up. My mum certainly never ever put anybody before herself, still doesn't. It takes us kids to do it now, and that's the environment I was brought up. It's a learned behaviour. So yeah, I think it's definitely useful for someone to do that, or reach out for and talk about it with peers. There's lots of networks now on LinkedIn, etc., for working women to have those conversations, and with pals. You sort of, when you have your kids, you go into that circle of childminders, and the mums tots groups and that sort of thing. Conversation shifts, focus shifts, but you can often likewise find someone within that. I've got a couple of pals that work full time as well, and we chat with each other when things are not going well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can underestimate the importance of having people like that, and communicating with people like that, that are maybe in a similar situation. It sounds like you've utilised, and it sounds like you've obviously got a great family network around you as well.
Yeah, and also Oppo were amazing. Charlie and Harry were fantastic when I first started, and I certainly, after the first 3 months, had a big wobble and crisis of confidence, and it's the environment where I could be open with that, and then they supported me through it. So
that's really, really cool, really good. That's great, Sally. That's been really an interesting kind of route we took there, but I'm really glad we went down there. It was really really insightful. So thanks very much for coming on the podcast today, and I wish you all the best with everything that's going to go on with Oppo Brothers in the next couple of years. And it'd be interesting to see where the guys and yourself obviously take the brand and take the business, and how to navigate the challenges that I think we're gonna probably see, and or seeing now that we continue to see. Thanks everyone for listening. As ever, your support is much appreciated. Take care.